Hello and welcome to the Fighting Spirit Podcast. As always, I'm Jason. I'm here to bring us the retrospective for UFC 257, where Dustin Poirier, for the first time ever, knocked out Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor had never been knocked out prior to 257. He had lost via submission, but never been knocked out, never been finished in that way. And it was a huge win for him, and it was an okay night for us. We actually underperformed here. We had some things that just did not go our way for our calls, and so we ended up going 5-6 on the night, about 45% accurate. We only nailed one on the Patreon. It was an underdog, so at least we got that much correct, but not a good performance out of us. And let's talk about them. Let's get into it. Here's the show. All right, so we're going to start things out with the loss of Conor McGregor. Now, we had went out and picked Conor, but if you remember on that podcast, I was giving a lot of reasons not to doubt Poirier. And so it's kind of like in the back of my mind, in my heart, something I knew Poirier was going to come out and surprise us. That's why I gave all of those don't overlook this guy caveats as I was going through the Conor decision to win. But he was winning on the numbers, and so, hey, we had to go with that. But Conor went out there, and I think he mostly performed as expected. He did clip Poirier. Maybe the power wasn't quite there for one-touch knockout ability, but he touched Poirier. He got up off the takedown. He showed some good takedown defense. He did everything but deal with southpaw leg kicks, and particularly a low calf kick, which has been an element of the game that's come in the last couple of years. Now, John Kavanaugh's head coach has said that Conor's never had to deal with it in the past and probably wasn't prepared for it. But I really hate that excuse because as the head coach, which, by the way, I think Conor honestly just does his own thing. I don't think Kavanaugh has any real control over what he does day to day at this point. But let's just call him head coach for the convenience of it. I think that John Kavanaugh failed there. I think that the people around him failed. And Conor, if he's running his own camp, failed. This has been a part of the game for a couple of years, and, he said that he was turning his leg, but he wasn't executing it properly, and then Kavanaugh went out and said, well, when they're using shin pads, you think you're checking them, but you're really not, and I think, maybe it comes down to ring rust and time out of the octagon. Maybe it comes down to not training properly. I don't know if it's motivation. Conor did seem motivated. He seemed like a new version of himself, a humbler version of himself. But all of that at the end of the day led him to a failure here. So inadequate preparation, maybe ring rust, possibly. The lack of ego, we haven't seen a Conor without ego really ever. And this, I think, was the first time, we saw him in the cage even not doing the Billy strut, not walking around showing he owned the cage. And I don't know what made him, choose not to do those things. Was it that he was uncomfortable? He was nervous. He hadn't done it in a long period of time. I honestly don't know. But what I do know is that Dustin Poirier is one of the best mixed martial artists in the world, and he will now be fighting for the title. Who that will be is really up in the air. Michael Chandler seems to be who Dana picked, but as one of my buddies pointed out in the press conference by Poirier, he said he would go sell hot sauce if it was Chandler, and so maybe that makes it Charles Oliveira is probably the most logical pick next. I personally think that is the pick if it cannot be Chandler. Now, there's also Gaethje out there. Poirier already beat Gaethje, so honestly, I want to get some new blood in there. Charles Oliveira does deserve a shot, and I think that is where he will be going, unless they can sell the Chandler fight, which money talks. We'll see what happens there. Then, Conor's side of things. Conor now, I think, needs to fight a guy who probably has a couple of losses, or at least a loss. So I'm looking at Hooker, I'm looking at Ferguson. I could also look at Gaethje, but Gaethje's leg kick, I think, would make him focus on having to, amp that part of the game. But I think let's give him somebody that he can be a little more comfortable against. Or, maybe you do give him Gaethje and just give him trial by fire. But I think Gaethje, Tony Ferguson, and then we got to look also at Dan Hooker, who lost on the same night. I think those are what's next for Conor. I think any of those fights, and you know what, the more I talk about it here and think about it, I think I actually do like Gaethje. Now, Gaethje's not a southpaw, so he does have that advantage that low calf kick might not be as effective unless he's willing to change stance. If Gaethje does change stance, obviously it is there again, and I'm sure working with Trevor Whitman, they would try to exploit that, or at least, see where it was during the match. But I actually do like that. I like forcing Conor to be uncomfortable to see if he can rise to the challenge, and I think the Gaethje fight is certainly one that could be the most interesting as I think about it. There's also the Tony fight. That's a fight that Conor missed on the way up, so I'd be okay with running that one. And then there's always Hooker, who could have a little more traditional, I think, kickboxing affair with McGregor. But honestly, the more I talk about it now, I like Gaethje. Let's book that fight. All right, in the co-main here, we had Michael Chandler defeating Dan Hooker. Another one we got incorrect here. But this was a debut fight. I did say that I am using the Strikeforce numbers. Chandler did actually win. So if you listen to that one, you know there's a little grain of salt situation. But Chandler went out there 2 minutes, 30 seconds in, knocked out Hooker. Hooker looked scared. He reminded me of the way that Mearshart went in against Hamzat. He was just, dancing around the cage a lot, not willing to engage, and he ended up paying for it. I don't know if he was scared of the wrestling, the explosiveness, but he didn't look comfortable in there at any point in the time. He really, he didn't stay off the fence, wouldn't take the center of the octagon, didn't try to bring the fight to Chandler. It was a weird contest, and then he ended up taking his gloves off in the center after the fight was over, maybe leading us to believe he could retire. And maybe if he was thinking about retirement, he should have already been retired. I don't know what to say about Hooker, but he did not perform the way I thought he would. I thought that he would make it a little bit of a dogfight. He had dogfights with Poirier, a top competitor, almost put him out, to probably fight McGregor had he. He brings a lot to the table, and he didn't do that at all against Chandler. My only guess is he was so afraid of the wrestling that it really screwed with him, or he had a pre-existing injury, or he was just mentally not there, hence the retirement and thinking about doing other stuff with his life. But either way, hats off to Chandler. He put in a spectacular performance, and if he isn't fighting for the title, he's going to fight another top-tier competitor. I don't see it being Conor next. I think that he's going to be more kind of circling the Shark Tank to go right for the title. In fact, he even called out Khabib, which, if he fights another couple more times, I could see Khabib coming back. Potentially, but honestly, if Khabib does come back, it's probably going to be after a couple of years. I think he'll make his 30-0 comeback a big fight in 2 to 3, 4 years' time. Honestly, like a GSP with the 185-pound title. But we'll see. Khabib's, I think, out of the picture. Chandler is in the title discussion, and I look forward to seeing him again. In the next one here, Joanne Calderwood defeats Jessica Ai. In this one, Jessica Ai really underperformed. Very little head movement, played a Muay Thai game with Calderwood, who's so good at it. Calderwood, she just, she's standing, firing down the pipe, not using footwork, and just out-battering Ai. And she played the Muay Thai game. I thought that she was going to come in, be more dynamic, have a little bit better takedown setup, find angles, right? She was never able to find an angle. She was content to stand there and go toe-to-toe with a Muay Thai specialist, and that's just the wrong thing to do. She was outstruck 2-1. Each of one of them did score takedowns, but I think, really underperformed in this one. I was not impressed at all. I was really impressed with Calderwood. She did look like the competitor that could have fought Valentina. I don't know how that would have went, but she did look like that caliber. And then Jessica Ai looked very far off. I did not like the way she looked whatsoever, and it was a bad call on our behalf. And the next one, Mahmoud Murdyov defeats Andrew Sanchez. This one we did get correct. Murdyov picks up a knockout late in the third round, 2 minutes, 59 seconds. Looks really good all night. Defeated Sanchez pretty handily, outstriking him 79-48, and I think just looking like the better man overall. In the next one, we got wrong as well. Mariana Rodriguez defeats Amanda Ribas. In this one here, I was pretty much, along with the rest of the MMA world, convinced that Ribas was going to win this. It felt like kind of a no-brainer. Ribas' hands were good enough. Her ground game was excellent. And we basically saw this. First round, Ribas went out and dominated, and then got clipped in the second round. This was one of our Patreon picks, along with McGregor and Sarah McMahon. We got McMahon and missed the other two, including Ribas here. But either way, just a weird performance. It's a setback for sure. Ribas definitely was a young, upcoming star, I think, with potential, but this sets back her career. Hopefully she can bounce back, and hopefully this is just a bit of a fluke, which I honestly think it was. She got clipped. Getting clipped doesn't make you a bad fighter, and making mistakes doesn't make you a bad fighter. Sometimes other people get the better of you, even if it's just down to pure luck. I'm not saying anything bad about Mariana Rodriguez. It's more than luck in almost every occasion, but I think that Hebus is better than the fighter we saw get knocked out. I think the first round version of her is the one that we should have seen throughout all 3 rounds. So we'll see what happens, but Hebus did take an L for us on that one. In the next one, we got incorrect, but my heart. Also, this was a fight that 2 fights were canceled, so we ended up with Arman Tsarukyan taking Matt Frevola. Now, Frevola is supposed to go up against a little more of a striker, not a wrestling specialist, so I think his preparedness wasn't quite there. But Tsarukyan scores 10 takedowns on Frevola. I had picked Frevola in this one by the numbers. I didn't like that pick, honestly. If it weren't for the numbers, I would have gone with something else. You definitely didn't catch this one on Patreon, but Tsarukyan just annihilates him. 50 strikes to 16, 10 takedowns to none, and just ragdolls him around the octagon all night. Tsarukyan is a wrestling force to be reckoned with after he defeated Frevola like that, and I'm looking forward to seeing more out of him in the future. In the next one, we got correct. Brad Tavares defeats Antonio Carlos Jr. This one was solid. Shoeface did not perform all that well. Did get 1 takedown, but mostly had to keep it standing, and Tavares is a standing striking specialist. He was able to outdo the grappler in the striking department, putting on some good damage and picking up a phenomenal win via unanimous decision. Oh, you know what? I said it backwards earlier. The Patreon was for Juliana Pena, not Sarah McMahon. My apologies. Sarah McMahon picked up the loss on this one. We had picked Pena on the Patreon. It's there. You can go check it if you like. But anyways, McPena picks up an underdog money for us, outstriking McMahon 38-21 and just looking really good on the ground. Even though McMahon was able to score 3 takedowns, she was not able to control the positions. We saw Pena basically out-grappling her. And, for a silver medalist in the Olympics, she could execute the takedowns, but we could definitely see she was at a disadvantage once it became a submission grappling setup, and Pena definitely outperformed her, picking up the rear naked choke late in the 3rd round, 3 minutes 39 seconds, and putting on a spectacular performance for the Venezuelan Vixen. Then the next one here, Marcin Perchinio defeats Khalil Roundtree. This is one I got incorrect. Roundtree really underperformed, was outstruck 2-1. Perchinio, who hadn't looked good in the UFC up until this point with 3 straight losses, comes out and performs like the guy I think we all expected him to be when he first came out, but really surprising in this one. Roundtree way underperformed, Perchinio way overperformed, and so that is the craziness that is MMA on occasion. A lot of things tonight I feel like we were just blatantly wrong, and it just, people were way underperforming to their numbers if I had them as winning, and then sometimes way overperforming if I had them as losing. And like look at Hooker and Chandler, look at Calderwood and I mean, these are scenarios that are tough to predict. I think these are outlier performances compared to their overalls, but hey, it is what it is. Those are statistics for you. The last 2 here, Mosfar Evolov defeats Nick Lentz. This was basically a lock of the night. Mosfar defeats Nick Lentz 82-46. In the striking department, picking up a takedown and just putting it on a guy that is a really great veteran in Nick Lentz. So this definitely sets up Mosfar for some good, talented fights upcoming. It was a split decision win from Mosfar, but I thought that was a weird call to make. I thought Evolov won this fight pretty handily, and so it was a good performance out of him. And then the last one, Amir Albazi defeats Zalgas Zumagulov. In this one here, Albazi, the Iraqi fighter, outstrikes and out-grapples Zumagulov to pick up a solid win and round us out here for 5-6 on the night. So, like I said, 5-6, not the best performance. We should have probably snuck a few other wins in there, just based on the way things were projected, but it's hard to hit the projections sometimes. It just is what it is, and we'll just have to look forward to getting it better and getting it right for Overeem versus Volkov, which that card has not yet been compiled on the website I'm looking at here. So we just have Alistair Overeem and Alexander Volkov taking place on February 6th, 2021. That's going to be the day before the Super Bowl, so we'll have a card coming up in a week, so that's why I get this out as an independent recap cast. All right, so that does it for us, though. If you'd like to get in touch with the Fighting Spirit Podcast, reach out to me at fightingspiritpodcast@gmail.com. Also get in touch with me on Twitter at MMAFightPicks01, and there's the Patreon as well. I know we underperformed a little this week. We nailed one underdog in Pena, but missed the other 2, which was Hebus and McGregor. They were minus 300s or so, so we didn't quite come out even. We lost a little bit of money this week, and just is what it is. So we'll still have fight picks there, which had performed well. We're still up for the last couple of events here for sure. I went 3-0 the week prior, and so we'll just try to pick things back up and keep the performances rolling. So until I speak with you again next time for UFC Fight Night, Overeem versus Volkov, happy fight picking.